I wanted to keep as many of the lyrics as I could. I didn't love changing them. So instead of changing the lyrics to like fit a 4/4 meter, I would just like add, a few bars or add time. Some of the songs are just like, yeah, there's this one measure of 2 that happens at the beginning and doesn't happen again. So, but you wouldn't notice unless you're actually sitting there counting everything.
Hey there, hello again, and welcome back to The Record Process. This week, Victoria Park, better known by her artist name Pictoria Vark, takes us inside her 2022 release and debut album, The Parts I Dread. She takes us into some of the inspirations behind the record, along with her unique writing style of starting with bass and vocals, and how this leaves her open to pushing the envelope of her songs quarterly after the fact. We also discuss how working with longtime collaborators, even remotely, can create an open writing process where you can bounce ideas around freely and give honest feedback without fear of offending. If you listen to this show, if you make music of your own with collaborators, you know how important, but often how difficult that can really be. And even if you can't relate to that exact experience right now, Victoria offers so many other great insights into how she made this beautiful record come to life. So here we go. The task of making a great album is rarely a solo endeavor, and companies like Audio Movers help empower musicians and creators by streamlining their workflow together and enabling them to make more efficient and informed creative choices. Famous for their groundbreaking collaborative plugin tool, Listen To, Audio Movers have made it possible to stream audio files in real time directly from your DAW to anyone, anywhere in the world. And recently, Audio Movers have expanded their dynamic plugin suite with Inject, an impressive audio routing solution that allows users to route audio in and out of any channel in your DAW. And alongside Inject stands the newly updated Omnibus 2.0, a software application that turns your Mac into a virtual patch bay, making it possible to route audio between applications and hardware seamlessly. And you can get 25% off Inject and Omnibus right now by heading to audiomovers.com and entering the code RECORDPRO at checkout. With over 1 million plus artists already relying on DistroKid to get their music into Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube, TikTok, Tidal, Instagram, and all the major streaming platforms, you may have heard of it before. But if you're not yet familiar with just how easy DistroKid makes unlimited uploads and retaining 100% of your artist royalties and earnings, now is the time to finally see for yourself. And that's because they've just supercharged the functionality of their platform with the recent release of their new iOS app. The app allows you to upload new releases, check your streaming stats from Spotify and Apple, edit release metadata, and you can even set push notifications that will alert you every time you've earned royalties that you can withdraw right from the app. In addition to getting your music uploaded to DSPs faster than any competitor, DistroKid also has a ton of great promotional tools that can help you market your music better. You can view and share hyperfollow links and allow fans to pre-save your songs in advance, get the credits and lyrics for your songs instantly uploaded, and you can do all this for just $22.99 a year. So head to the App Store and download the DistroKid app for free now. Victoria Park, welcome to The Record Process. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Tom and I are very excited to get into unpacking this lovely record, The Parts I Dread, that was released, I guess about a year ago, just over a year ago, via Get Better Records. And it is, there's so much that I love about it. But let's start by telling anybody that might be listening that hasn't yet checked out the record or maybe is not wholly familiar with the project, a little bit about the backstory of where these songs and you as an artist came from.
Yeah, I guess the record kind of spawned from this move my parents were making when I was 19. I grew up in New Jersey. I lived there all my life. And then they were like, we're actually moving to Wyoming and you have no choice. You're coming with us. And I was like, no, I can't go there. I don't know anybody. And it just felt really big and out of control. And I think that cracked open a lot of other questions about, do I even like New Jersey? Do I feel at home here? My relationship to my parents, and ultimately coming to this realization is just like change is hard no matter what it is. So it became a catalyst for these bigger questions. Yeah, and spans across the 8 songs that make up this record.
Wow, that's so what did had you started the musical journey back in Jersey before you moved? I assume maybe. What did that look like?
I got interested in writing songs in kind of all my life, but didn't really feel like I was going anywhere until senior year of high school. That was the first time I had ever written a song and played it in front of other people, like did the full thing. And then I didn't really start this project until my first year of college, when I was a freshman at Grinnell in central Iowa. So that's kind of when a lot of these songs started coming together. A lot of the songs that I had, or I guess that a lot of the songs from that time period are on my first EP. And then gradually, as I kept writing more, it became an album. But I kind of started just like with each of the individual songs, as it were.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that first EP, what did you find out about yourself as a songwriter, as an instrumentalist? What were there some, what were the takeaways? Because I always find it, from one release or even one song to the next, I think we all kind of unpack the things that we do and don't like. And, there can be a lot of hindsight being 2020 as a songwriter, especially as time goes on. You look back at these as almost time capsules. But what was your, initially kind of moving into this next batch of songs that became, Parts I Dread? What were your thoughts in terms of those early songs? Were there things that you knew you wanted to do, things that you wanted to try and do differently?
So in writing the first songs for the first EP, I think that was just discovering that I could like write music at all. It's something I always had an interest in, but wasn't sure if I could like hold my own or figure out like how to record them or anything like that. So it really felt like a first outing of just like trying to write my own music, I guess. Yeah, just it feels like discovering you can do magic or something like that. Like if you're a character in a movie and you're just like, oh cool, I'm actually a wizard. It's like the only analogy I have. But so having that as like a groundwork made it easier going into parts to think a little bit more about recording and production and mixing and all things like that.
Is there anyone that you were like on this journey of like discovering that you're a wizard, Victoria? That was my like best Hagrid approach.
We'll get some reverb on that in post, Tom.
Yeah. Amazing. Thank you. Was there anyone that you were like looking up to in terms of songwriting, as far as like how not only like the words and the meaning of the words, but like the song's feel, the song's instrumentation, that kind of stuff?
I think the first person where I was like, it's so blown away by their songwriting that I remember is Connor Oberst, and getting really into Bright Eyes and like middle school, high school, listening to some of the songs, and I'm like, I could never be a musician because this is everything that's ever been needed to be said. He's such a wordy songwriter and storyteller, and I think that has been really cool. I'm a big John Darnielle fan, Mountain Goats fan.
Oh yeah.
Someone else who's just so prolific and a great storyteller, can really put you in a moment in time. And I think as I've gotten, older and figuring out, listening to a lot more music, I'm a big Joni Mitchell fan. My favorite band and songwriter of all time is this band in Chicago called Half Gringa. And I think Izzy from that band is my favorite lyricist ever. So that's been cool to like draw from both, people, much more established bands, and also like my peers and stuff. Yeah. And being able to just like take all of that in and then make something, my own, or something totally different, but drawing from a lot of places.
Yeah. I mean, those are some pretty heavy hitters when it comes to lyricists and songwriters and storytellers. And it's interesting, we like listening to this record. I was talking with Tom, after we had done our homework, so to speak, and kind of really gotten immersed in it. And one of the things that struck me is how up front, and maybe we'll get into this, and maybe some of it is intentional and some of it is a product of the way it was recorded. But you mentioned Bright Eyes and what he does, and I think there's such almost like a rawness and an intimacy to a lot of those songs where it feels like you're just sitting right there in a room listening to him play that song. And that's kind of the same thing that I realized. I mean, even down to maybe this is a good transitional point to start talking about the instrumentation of the record. And because I think that's extra special as well. But that's one of the things that struck me, where it feels like you're just right there in front of me singing these songs. It's like, it's, because of the way the vocals treated. And I think it just does this incredibly powerful thing by pulling that rawness and that realness out of the songs. I just love it so much, but I wonder if if that was the intent, and maybe, that's a cool entry point to explain to people where, how these songs started coming together the way they did.
Thank you so much. And that really means a lot, that that's something you can pick up on a listen from this record. I personally, even when I play live, don't have a ton of reverb on my voice. I don't love having a big washed out kind of sound. And same thing on the record, we kept it pretty light to feel like you're really close. Like, I feel like reverb, because of, I don't know, acoustic, things that I as a normal human don't understand the signs of, like, it like puts you out of much further distance from where the like sound is coming from. So by keeping it nice and dry, you feel really, really close. And I feel like that, it definitely keeps the songs feeling intimate and warm and not so far away.
Yeah.
So in terms of how these songs came together, we were in the middle. When were we? This is January 2021. So this is like Delta variant era.
Yep.
I'm like trying to go back in time and figure it out. And we were initially thinking about maybe trying to like isolate and then do a recording at someone's house, over winter break of college. And that seemed like not what was going to happen. So we ended up just doing everything from our own respective home studios. And I made it primarily with my friends, Jason Ross, who played a lot of guitar, and then my friend Gavin Kane, who did drums and synth and co-produced it with me as well. And he also mixed this record. So he was juggling a lot of hats on this. And it was a lot of, I think it worked so well because we had been playing together our whole lives. We had been playing music together since we were like 10, 11, 12, So we understand each other as players really well. And it made it easy to develop the demos and just like be able to send tracks back and forth and not have to explain every little thing to people. Someone who like kind of understands you and your sound and what you're going for. But it did take a lot of file management. We had to create a whole separate Gmail account, which we maxed out the storage of, just sending stems back and forth, having like 20 different folders and trying to keep track of what was what. So props to Gavin for having to assemble all of that and really organize a lot of those files, because that is not something I'm particularly good at.
Yeah. That's not an easy task. And I'm glad you brought that up too, because that's sometimes kind of the thing that everybody forgets. We talk about like the flashy, the tracking and the fun gear and the time, the place, the space. But if you're doing something remote like this and there's multiple collaborators passing stuff around, it can get really convoluted very quickly. And that's the way it's very easy to lose stuff. and accidentally realize that you've hit the delete all and save button, and or something is no longer in a drive or a folder that you need it to be, and then you got to go find that search. So yeah, having somebody at the helm that can pull all of these things together and keep the ship moving in a cohesive fashion is really important for sure. So it's great that you had someone like that. And then you mentioned one other thing, that you had been playing with these people for so long.
Were they still in Jersey at this point?
Yes. So
okay.
Jason was living in his hometown, and then Gavin in his hometown, which are not the same, but like right across from one another. And then I was in Grinnell, Iowa.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. I was just trying to map it out of like where in time we're at.
Yeah, so you're traversing time zones, and everything is going to the cloud and being brought back down. The way you kind of described, there's almost an intuitive trust, because these are people who kind of know your tastes as a player and know, those things, which I think is really important in keeping a positive and creative momentum, flowing forward, that you're not getting stuck in the weeds of someone trying something and be like, no, not that sound. Like, no, that's too much. That can really bog you down. And especially in the middle of a pandemic, it can really get very frustrating. I mean, even if it's just yourself and you don't know what you want, it can get frustrating, but especially when you have a lot of hands in there. But it seems like this was a cast of characters that was really helpful and empowered you to keep moving forward, which I think is great. And that you were extending that trust. That's beautiful. And especially to come out with something that's so cohesive is really special and speaks to that. So I love that you mentioned that, because I think it's really important for people to hear.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's like, I feel like there's also like, when you really trust someone, you can also be more real with your notes and your criticism too, because someone's not going to take it personally, or it's like you have that foundation of like personal connection. Like, I don't know. I feel like it takes a while for me to like fully let someone into my space, and I think that's because when they're there, it's like I love leaving it pretty open, to allow my friends to like write the parts they want to write and then have that be back and forth. I don't know if my record would sound the same if Jason didn't write, some of these like guitar parts that are so singable and almost like complementary melodies to a lot of the bass and vocal parts I have. So it's really in conversation with all of these people for sure.
Are there any specific parts that you remember, like kind of getting them back, hearing them dropped in the session for the first time, that really hit you and really, kind of had that aha, this is my record, this makes it kind of moment? Because it's really powerful when that happens.
Definitely. I think with Demarest, so what we did before the actual session was we just kind of did these rough demos where I would send a rough vocal and a rough bass, and then get drums and guitar back, just to like see how the parts work together, and if we like them or not. And I remember Gavin and I got back the Demarest one we listened to, and we're like, something just doesn't sound like, something sounds missing or empty, and we couldn't really quite put a pen in it. And I remember Gavin was like, I think the guitar solo shouldn't be so chromatic. I think it should be way more like, I don't know, total, or just like in less dissonant. It's like, no, I think the guitar part's perfect. And then Jason and I were like, we have to keep the guitar part. It's not the guitar part. And it was really cool when we got the actual session for that going, that it all just kind of came together. I'm not really sure what changed between the demo and the actual song. I think it was just like putting more emotion like into the actual takes that we were taking. And yeah, it was really cool to just like let that song breathe and have it turn out the way it did.
As music fans, we know that the records we love are more than just something we listen to, right? Over time, they become a part of us and a part of our identity. And nobody knows this better than the people at Rockabilia, the best online shop for band merch, hands down. For more than 30 years, Rockabilia has offered the largest selection of officially licensed music merchandise available around the world. They do it all, from authentic concert t-shirts to band hoodies and posters, and even accessories from your favorite iconic artists. They do hats, backpacks, bags, pins, belts, you name it. They have it, as well as exclusive access to limited edition designs that you can only get through them and the artists that they partner with. Maybe you missed the merch table at a recent show and you're looking to treat yourself. Maybe you're looking to treat somebody else in your life with a gift card. Or maybe you're looking to outfit the children in your life with some new gear, whether they have 2 legs or 4. Yes, they even have accessories for your pets. They have it all, so just head over to rockabilia.com or follow the link in our show notes, and for a limited time, all Record Process listeners can receive 10% off their order just by entering the code ROCKRECORD. That's all one word, ROCKRECORD, at checkout. So we are extremely proud to have the people at Oxford Pennant as an official sponsor of the Record Process again here on Season 5. And I'm here to tell you about their new pennant and flag customizer. It's real simple. All you have to do is head to oxfordpennant.com to make your own custom flag on demand. Simply type in your favorite phrase, inside joke, lyric, whatever you want, approve the preview, and Oxford will print, sew, and ship your flag straight to you from their beautiful headquarters in sunny Buffalo, New York. Creating and ordering your own custom flags from Oxford Pennant is actually so easy and affordable now that I'm concerned I'll have to start paying off my co-host Tom just to prevent him from putting every dumb thing I say this season on a flag. Seriously, I wouldn't put it past him. But with great power comes great responsibility, as we know, and that's exactly what Oxford Pennant is giving you here. All you have to do is head to oxfordpennant.com, search Customizer, and let the designing begin.
You were saying that, I mean, the songs that you were sending out, the demos that you're sending out, that they started with, like, it was vocals and bass, and then, like, I guess, like, is that typically how you're writing everything, is like starting with that vocals and bass?
Pretty much, yeah. I wrote everything on for this record with bass and vocals, having different lyrics kind of going on, and then trying to see what bass parts they would fit over and trying to craft a melody around that. So that would always be like the foundation. I would send over like a voice memo of that just like bass and vocal song that I had. And then with some ideas for production and parts and where certain things would come in, and then let my friends kind of like expand upon it. And then we would like review those together.
Amazing.
How do you think that informs the writing, starting with, just the foundation of bass? Because it's a very, by nature, it's a rhythm instrument, I guess in its own way. But it's also, there's also a melodic quality to bass. It depends on who the player is. And you read, I think there was a Rolling Stone article where you talked about listening to a lot of pet sounds, maybe. I'm wondering, talk to us a little bit about what that unlocks, or does it give you space as a vocalist, as a songwriter, to know how things go? Or how do you think it changes the way the songs are kind of born?
This is a great question. It allowed room for odd time and odd phrasing to kind of come up, because I was starting with, I wanted to keep as many of the lyrics as I could. I didn't love changing them. So instead of changing the lyrics to like fit a 4/4 meter, I would just like add, a few bars or add time. Some of the songs are just like, yeah, there's this one measure of 2 that happens at the beginning and doesn't happen again. So, but you wouldn't notice unless you're actually sitting there counting everything. And I don't know if that necessarily would have happened if I was writing on guitar, which had like kind of a, like, I think if you're writing and strumming, like it's a kind of an automatic motion. So it's like, it's easier to like not, or I don't know. I just feel like for me, it just like wouldn't work that way. And then I guess the other thing is, I don't really know a lot of music theory, but I just like know like 1 or 2 things and just like run with it. And one of those being like this idea of contrary motion or like oblique motion. So it's like, if your bass line is going up, you can have like the vocal melody going down, and vice versa, and it will sound very good. It just like opens up a lot of space as like these 2 single melody elements. Like, so I think that creates a really interesting foundation for the song, and also opens up space. Yeah.
I'm constantly like always telling people, like, bass, I feel like, is the most important instrument within a song, because it's like what you can use to flip the emotionality of a song. That's that tilt factor. So the fact that you're writing with the bass and you're writing bass and vocal, if it works there, then it doesn't matter what the arrangement is. It's going to work everywhere. Whereas like if you wrote on guitar, you could change the emotion of the song by putting a different bass line underneath that. Like, yeah. So I love that aspect. There's a few writers that come to mind that I know that also have that process and equally as powerful, like, end result. So yeah, just really cool. That's a really cool aspect.
Thank you. Yeah, I really appreciate that. And I think you're so right. Like, if you have a bass, if you just take like the whatever note you're playing in the bass, and you have your vocal, note, you can change the harmony. You can change what chords work over it. Because if you have, 2 or 3 notes, it opens up room to change the tone and the emotion of the song by just changing the chord. And I guess in that way, yeah, it's like if you have the chord structure set, you can like have, I don't know, like add notes, which you just like put in the bass part. But I really like that it leaves a lot more open in terms of like choices you can make while still having like whatever foundation,
Yeah, it demands a certain extra bit of intention in the note choice and in the melody, the phrasing, and the vocal. Whereas, I mean, I know this. I remember it's like it can be very easy to lean on, some weak or kind of tired melodies if you have the whole harmonic structure ringing with some big open chords of a guitar or some, lush synth or keys behind it. And then you strip it away and you're like, oh, I guess that melody is really not that interesting, but you don't have that problem here because you know from the start that melody is great and it speaks exactly the way you want it to speak, which I think is so cool. And I agree. It's like, sometimes in terms of like songwriting exercises, and I'm curious if you experienced any of this at all throughout the making of this record, but I'll occasionally, try to tell people to stretch or start with a different instrument. If you're kind of stuck, and you always sit down and are writing on an acoustic guitar, get up and go to a piano. You know what I mean? And just like, the notes are laid out differently. There's a different physicality to it. There's a different timbre to it. This is also why sometimes even like throwing effects pedals on while you're writing can kind of inspire you to take a different direction and play something completely different. And I think it's the same thing with bass, actually, because there are a couple of times where I've even just been like, hey, take the chords out of it. Just start yourself with one thing and see how that affects it. Was there any time on this song that you maybe started with something other than bass and got a different result that you liked? Or
so ironically, that's kind of like what the direction my writing is going now, since like most of the songs on this past record were written on bass. And I feel like it's good, to keep things fresh, to be malleable and like to have that kind of newness, because you can play around and not feel so self-conscious about like making mistakes because you're like it's not your primary instrument. So I've been doing pretty much all of the above that you stated. I got a capo, so I'm using capo on my bass to get different harmonics and work in different keys and see kind of what comes up that way. I have a guitar that I put in some open tunings, ironically. So it's not like this is before I was not saying guitar is bad, don't do guitar. So I have returned to guitar. And then, also doing like open tunings with that too, to keep it fresh. So I think because of the way that I wrote parts, it's causing me or inspiring me to like branch out and see what I come up with, trying different methods.
Yeah.
During that process, how are you? I mean, anything that you do, Victoria, will be Pictoria, Vark. That's the through line. But how are you threading that needle when you're not like starting out with bass? Like, are there things that like you're like, this is me. This is my sound, and like with these new songs, I guess.
Yeah, I think what's been really fun is like if I have like a guitar and a vocal part, I can just like play that demo and then write the bass part over it and then send it out. So it's like a little more fleshed out. Being able to like hear the bass part and like that being, I think, where a lot of like the dynamics and the structural comes in, and also yeah, just giving it harmonic movement and kind of going back to like my primary instrument, my musical home, as it were, to make the songs like sound like me.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
Well, and so I mean, and so much of, you know, when you talk about like what is you and decidedly authentically you as an artist, I mean, you know, so much of it is like all the, you know, Mountain Goats, Bright Eyes, like the, you know, you mentioned lyricists, right? And so the, like, speaking about the lyrics, I think that's always also indicative stylistically of what is you. So when you started approaching these songs, you know, how do you find those stories and decide to unpack them and structure them into lyrical form for these songs? Do you just kind of like freestyle write? Are you kind of picking up a bass and just kind of humming a few words until you find a phrase you like and that's your entry point? How do you start, and how do you flesh them out?
I think it'll start just kind of with like a moment or idea that I want to capture. I feel like a lot of the songs on this record start from like one kind of specific moment or idea that like I can always draw it back to like one thing that kind of inspired me to write the song, and like getting just like notes app, notebook, just writing it out. And I feel like a lot of the times it's like I need to write something down over and over again. So it's like even if I'm writing like the same, trying to figure out what the next verse will be, I'll just like have to like flip a new page, like get rid of all, like sort through all of the junk that I've scribbled out, and like, you know, like, okay, this is what the song is. And kind of through that repetitive motion, kind of figuring out the lyrics, figuring out the song. And then something else will be, once I have some words on paper that I think I like, or if I've, you know, started putting them with bass parts and a melody, is like recording them, listening to it back and being like, oh, that word sounds a little awkward, you know, even though I liked how it looks on paper or like the, you know, the sentiment of it, just like seeing how the like, I guess the consonants and syllables kind of flow together as it's sung.
Yeah. Do you find that when you record it and kind of listen back, there's a certain amount of objectivity that you get from it, you know, where you know, it's telling the same thing, but you can do your best to poke holes in it, you know, and something that is bugging you. I find, and I'm wondering if you do too. Do you notice a sense of something sinking in? That what's your kind of barometer for when something is finished? You know, for when there's no more. Like, do you get a sense of? Tom and I talk about this, like with mixing. Like when you get there, you realize you find yourself, you're no longer thinking about what is bugging you, and you're just listening to the song and reacting to the song, right? I'm wondering what your perspective is like that, especially even just like in the middle of the process, you know?
I think the parts, not that I was less judgmental, but I feel like I'm a little bit impatient because I write so slowly. Like by the time Parts was released, I had that was like all of the songs I had written up until that point. Like I didn't have anything really on the cutting room floor, or like one thing that didn't even make it to a demo, you know? So I think it's like sending it to some friends or taking a listen and being like, I don't know, like I could try to change it, but I don't know if it's improving the song at all. I think it's just like, you know, moving it back and forth, you know, it's like whether, you know, you use one word or a different word, like if the song is mostly the same, like just go with it, you know. I've also had that happen where it's like playing it live. I think there's some small words that I've like changed singing it live that I didn't even realize I was doing until I listened to the record. I was like, oh, I had a very different word there, or, you know, just a different word. But I think that's getting harder now. I don't know why my like inner critic is having a hard time judging it so much or not like overworking it. And that's also a thing, or I don't know, like you can hear when something's been worked too much, and like, well, what do you do to scale that back? You kind of almost just have to like start over on a clean slate and just have it be done when it's done.
Were there any times that you went backwards on this record that you identified when you said we've gone too far? We gotta step backwards.
I think this was in mixing, and it was the first time. It was like the first time we heard the I Can't Bike mix, and it was just too full. Like we had a lot of elements going on, but they were all kind of happening at the same time, and it took a while to get the like right balance of when things should come in, and then also giving the ending a lot more space, like letting the guitars kind of rip and like be that loud and you know that close to clipping, because there was just less. We just took a lot of the stuff out. We kept it like that part pretty sparse, even though there's like other guitars happening kind of throughout. Yeah, I think that was the thing where it's just like there's too much going on, you know, we gotta take some stuff out.
Yeah, that's a great example. I think I have one, maybe in an interesting twist, maybe we'll end by starting at the beginning with the first song on the record. I think it again, what we were talking about, it does a good job of drawing the listener in. And I think there's a central theme, kind of what you've, imagined, talking about space, and having this really like, very, very present, very, like intimate character to not just the vocals, but a lot of the songs. And that was, I think, a beautiful example. And I think starting a record, the idea of patience kind of comes up, and that talks, right in line with how you as an artist and as a songwriter kind of choose to dictate how time will play out for a listener. What were your thoughts and approaches? Did you know that you always wanted to start the record this way, or when it comes to like you have a bunch of songs on their own, how do you come up with laying them out and presenting them in an order that you think represents the vision?
Thank you so much. Twin is one of my favorite songs on the record. It's one of Gavin's who worked on it, and I didn't necessarily intend to start with that one, but as I was like moving around the songs I had written into kind of an order, it just made sense to start it that way, to like set the tone for the rest of the record, both I guess sonically and thematically, like in the lyrics. But yeah, I really love having like the kind of washy guitars and having it be really, really slow and almost like without rhythm, because there's no drums. Also, my friend Michael from this band Dolly Spartans added some of the like textured guitar parts going in and out, and yeah, I think he did such a great job with adding that as like another piece to that song.
Yeah, amazing. I think so too.
Yeah.
Well, Victoria, this has been so lovely. Thank you for sharing the process behind this record. We're highly excited to see what you come up with next, and where, keeping things fresh and working with some of those new tunings and capoed bass, lead you. I'm sure it will be somewhere great. But we appreciate your time here. And where can people find out more about Pictoria Vark and all other things Victoria Park? Wow, I can't believe I did that. Said it right, Tom. I did it right.
Congratulations.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Yes. So all of my social media is at Pictoria Park. This record and some of my other music is available on all streaming platforms as Pictoria Vark, and at pictoriavark.bandcamp.com. And yeah, that's about it. Thank you both so much for having me. This has been so fun to chat about this record with both of you.
Our pleasure. so much about Victoria's story and how this album came together, and the album itself are so inspiring. But I think the thing that had the biggest impact to me, I think the greatest takeaway from this interview is the idea of being comfortable offering and accepting real criticism. The idea of challenging your own expectations of others' thoughts and preferences, and really listening, not just hearing what you want and tuning out the rest. When you boil it down, this idea is a really difficult concept to master and to implement. It requires a lot of trust, and when you boil it down, I don't think any of us will ever truly master this. It's the inherent push and pull that you're trying to harness as a creative working with others. And I think even the best artists and musicians need that at times to fuel them and push them to evolve. But if you can really find a way to come at these conversations from a place of complete openness and transparency, I think that allows the true intention of your words or feedback to shine through. Sugarcoating your words in an effort to protect a friend's ego can often end up creating a more convoluted dialogue. And it's that dance that can lead to frustration among collaborators or bandmates time and time again. And that can ultimately rob a song of the hidden colors that might be conjured up by somebody else later on in the process. Colors like the ones you'll find all over Victoria's album. So manage your expectations early, communicate genuinely, and we'll see you right back here next week on
The Record Process.